Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot on our plate today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. Ahead of Liberation Day on Monday, President Park Geunhye grants special pardons to over 4,800 people, including the CJ Group chairman. Central banks around the world have been cutting rates into negative territory, and we take a look at whether these rates under are a friend or a foe to the global economy. These stories and more coming right up. President Park Geunhye has approved a list of people to be pardoned ahead of Korea's National Liberation Day, which falls on Monday. Now, politicians and public servants were excluded from the list, but the CJ Group chairman will be among the recipients. Our Song Ji-sun starts us off.
President Park Geunhye approved her third pardon since taking office. 4,876 people, most of whom are model prisoners, people who committed petty crimes for survival, or businessmen from smaller companies will have their sentences lifted. Among conglomerate chiefs, CJ Group chairman Lee Jae-hyun, who was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for tax evasion and embezzlement, was included as an exception as he's been suffering from a genetic disease that affects his muscles.
For the businessmen, we took into consideration the candidate's potential to contribute to society and the nation, with the goal of overcoming the current economic crisis and achieving national unity.
While approving the list of people to be pardoned at an extraordinary cabinet meeting, the president said that she hopes they will join in efforts to revive the economy and contribute to overall development in the country. Businessmen welcomed this news, saying recipients will get another chance to work in the field. CJ Group especially is expected to expand its investment and business activities, which had shrunk since Chairman Lee was found guilty. Some 1.4 million people with penalties and suspensions for driving violations will see their punishments lifted or reduced, allowing those who make a living on the road to get back behind the wheel starting Saturday. Politicians, felons, and those found guilty for sexual crimes, election violations, drunk driving, and hit-and-runs were not considered for pardons. Song Ji-sun, Business Daily.
And over at the National Assembly, the three main parties have agreed to pass the government's supplementary budget plan, which was submitted to Parliament for approval more than 2 weeks ago. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
At a meeting convened by the National Assembly Speaker on Friday, the floor leaders of Korea's three main political parties agreed to call a vote on the extra budget bill.
We will vote on the settlement of the 2015 budget and the extra budget for 2016 on August 22nd by opening a plenary session at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
The Special Committee on Budget and Accounts and other parliamentary committees will start deliberations on the budget bill next week to meet the deadline. If the budget bill is passed on schedule, the ministries will be able to implement the budget by the end of the month. The three parties also agreed to form a consultative group to allocate funds for a free childcare program for children between the ages of 3 and 5.
The opposition parties will continue our discussions on ways to subsidize the free childcare program so it can be included in next year's spending.
The government submitted its $10 billion budget supplement plan last month in a bid to invigorate the economy amid faltering exports and rising unemployment. Ji Myung-gil, Business Daily.
Households across the nation are expected to get some relief from fearfully high power bills in the blistering months of July to September. The government late on Thursday decided to temporarily lower the progressive rates on electricity in response to an increasing number of complaints from families as they struggle to keep cool in unusually high temperatures. As a result, roughly 22 million households will be able to save about 20% on their power bills in those months. But the plan is estimated to cost roughly $382 million for Korea's electricity provider KEPCO. Lawmakers of the ruling party and government officials have also agreed to create a joint task force to overhaul the country's 6-stage progressive charging system that many say overcharges households. Korea's import prices took a dive in July, falling for the first time in 3 months on the back of a stronger local currency and a decline in global oil prices. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, import prices fell 2.8% from the previous month, logging the fastest drop since October. The price of Korea's benchmark Dubai crude dropped to $42.53 a barrel, down 8.1% from June, while the Korean won gained 2.3% against the dollar on month. Export prices also took a tumble for the first time in 3 months, down 2.2% from a month earlier. Prosecutors here in Seoul plan to summon the head of Audi Volkswagen Korea, Johannes Themmer, for further questioning today after he was grilled for hours on Thursday. He is facing allegations that Volkswagen Korea forged test results on engine noise levels, fuel efficiency, and emissions. Our Kim Min-ji has this report.
After 16 hours of questioning, Johannes Themmer, the head of Audi Volkswagen Korea, left the Seoul Central Prosecutor's office early Friday morning. Prosecutors had summoned Themmer the day before to grill him over the automaker's emissions fabrication scandal.
I'm sorry for all this case. Very sorry.
Did you instruction of German headquarters? Did you receive the instruction German headquarters?
No.
Prosecutors asked whether Themmer had ordered the replacement of software and Golf models back in 2014 to reduce emissions after the vehicles were rejected for sale in Korea because they did not meet the requirements. Themmer was also questioned over whether he played a part in forging documents on emissions, noise levels, and fuel efficiency to receive certification from the government. Prosecutors are also looking to see if the German headquarters was involved and what role it played in the process. Korea's Environment Ministry recently banned sales and nullified the certifications for 80 submodels of 32 Volkswagen models suspected of being sold with forged documents and fined the company roughly $16 million. Themmer has been at the helm of the local branch of the German automaker since December 2012 and is responsible for all vehicle imports and sales. Prosecutors will summon the CEO again on Friday for another round of questioning. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
With a population of over 1.1 million people, Korea's 7th largest metropolis, Ulsan, is a key industrial hub, home to the country's largest shipyard. But as we reported earlier this week, a recent job report shows that its unemployment rate has jumped by the most across the nation as corporate restructuring pummels the local economy. Our Lee Joo-young takes us to Ulsan.
It's known as the industrial powerhouse of Korea. With the per capita gross regional domestic product as high as $53,000, Ulsan City, located on Korea's southeastern coast, is home to the world's largest automobile assembly plant, shipyard, and the second largest oil refinery in the world. The Ministry of Labor says employees working in the seaside city also receive the highest monthly wage compared to other parts of the nation of roughly $3,814, followed by those living in the capital Seoul. Despite Ulsan being one of the richest cities in Korea, its employment rate has dipped below the national average to 62.2% this year, the lowest in the country. The rate for women was even lower at just below 42%. In fact, while the number of unemployment benefit claims dipped about 0.7% for the whole country in the second quarter from a year earlier, that of Ulsan soared over 36%, recording the highest growth nationwide. The Labor Ministry says this comes on the back of aggressive corporate restructuring in the shipbuilding industry, which has resulted in massive layoffs. Experts say as many as 30,000 people from shipyards are estimated to lose their jobs this year. As the impact of corporate restructuring begins to present concrete challenges in once vibrant cities such as Ulsan, experts say the government should think beyond conventional support measures to help the jobless. This especially as the Korean economy continues to deal with a rigid labor market, which makes it more difficult for workers to find new jobs that offer similar incomes and benefits. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
Central banks around the world have been driving their key interest rates down to negative territory, but there's still a lot of room for debate on whether this strategy is actually working. For more, we're now joined by our Eunice Kim in the studio. Hello, Eunice.
Hello, Jean.
All right, so the negative rate policy is meant to encourage spending, but we're seeing the reverse effect where people seem to be saving more.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Those savings rates are just going up and up and up, not just in Europe, but also in Japan. Now, you'll remember the ECB had made waves when it delved into the, quote, negative experiment. And it's been about 2 years since then. And while some central bankers say it's too early to judge whether the policy works, we take a closer look at an unexpected trend.
The unorthodox policy started with Denmark, Switzerland, and Sweden. June of 2014, the ECB also rolled out a negative key interest rate, and the Bank of Japan hopped on the bandwagon February this year. And while the U.S. Central Bank is en route to a rate hike, Chair Janet Yellen has said it wouldn't be off her table of options. Not so for her counterpart in the UK. Bank of England Governor Mark Carney to reporters last week.
As you might have gathered, and you said in your question, I'm not a fan of negative interest rates. We see the negative consequences of them through the financial system. We've seen that in other jurisdictions. We see the issues with savers. It goes even further.
In theory, negative interest rates are supposed to encourage the masses to spend, since they don't get the returns they used to at the bank. But interestingly, countries with a negative rate policy, now covering about 25% of the world economy, are instead seeing their savings rates rise. According to an OECD report, Germany's household savings rate is at its highest since 2010, at 9.7%, and is poised to further climb this year to 10.4%. It's a similar trend in Japan.
The negative interest rates really have had a very limited impact on the Japanese economy. What has been very clear is that consumption has remained weak.
Amid lackluster spending, households in post-negative rate Japan put away, on average, 1.3% more in the January through March period. The country's overall savings rate is expected to rise to 2.1% this year. In Denmark, Switzerland, and Sweden, their rates were all at their highest since 1995, when records were kept, and they're poised to keep soaring. And households aren't alone. Also in the first quarter, non-financial companies in Japan increased their cash and deposit supply by 8.4% year over year, according to Bank of Japan, which was the largest margin in more than 2 decades. So then why is this happening? Some say it's because, for most, a negative interest rate policy spells out an economy in trouble. Even if rates are low enough to encourage lending and spending, without confidence in the future and with pensions dwindling, people are holding on to their cash with a firmer grip in preparation for what could be ahead.
So I guess this is all coming from growing fears and uncertainty. But Eunice, let's delve into that topic of pensions a little bit more, because the retiree population is only poised to grow from here on out, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The aging, ticking time bomb, as we call it, is not just a problem here in Korea and Japan. A report out this week projects that by the year 2030, 56 countries around the world will have more people 65 years and older than young people under 15. That means more people are saving up for retirement right now. And many of those putting away are putting away directly or indirectly into government bonds, which traditionally have been reliable forms of income. But negative rates have been changing that. As more and more bonds cross into negative territory, demand for them has been rising in investors' search for yield. And as you can see here, globally, negative yielding sovereign bonds have really grown in the year so far, surpassing the $10 trillion mark, according to the Bank of America, Merrill Lynch.
Now, it's not just the average citizen feeling the need to save. It looks like the sentiment apparently extends to billionaires around the world as well.
Right. So records were kept on billionaires since the year 2010, and apparently that saving sum has reached a peak. According to the WealthX billionaire census, not only are there now a record number of billionaires, they're also holding over $1.7 trillion in cash, which is about 22% of their net worth. And for more perspective, that is roughly the size of Brazil's GDP. The WealthX report said billionaires may be waiting for stock and asset valuations to return to bargain levels. The findings are in line with a study released by UBS last month, which said that super wealthy Americans hold about a fifth of their assets in cash, with more reconsidering their investments given the economic uncertainties related to the presidential election.
Now, after hearing all these stories, I feel like I need to save more.
Right, and central banks around the world are pulling out their hair as well.
Oh, well, we'll see where it goes from here on out. Thank you so much for coming in today, Eunice.
You bet. Have a great weekend.
You too. And that wraps it up for today and this week, but we'll be back next week with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and goodbye.